and welcome back to this here channel. My name is Michaela, this is Meekela Reads. I live here, and here in this channel we love to do readathons. Is there a readathon that I was more excited for this year than the Bloomin readathon? There was not. This is the peak. This is the piece de la resistance. I'm so excited to do the Bloomin readathon. There are 25 book prompts on this readathon bingo card, and I have picked one book for every single square on this bingo card. Is she overly ambitious? Yes. Is she gonna read all of it? Absolutely not. But would I be me if I didn't try? Bloomin readathon is a readathon that runs in November. For the entire month of November, it's run by Ali from Alice and Pages and Kirsty from Kirsty. I will leave them linked down below for your perusing preferences. However, I have 25 books to talk about here. We're just gonna talk about books. This video is gonna be entirely me rambling on about books that I know almost nothing about. So, without further ado, let us begin on the 25 books that I have to tell you about. So, the Bloomin readathon bingo card looks like this. It's very beautiful. Can we just take a minute to appreciate the beauty of the bingo card? The first space we have on the bingo card is B, which is read a book on your shelf that has a lot of buzz. For this one, I have selected Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If this is not the most beautiful book that you have ever seen, I think that this is single-handedly the most beautiful book that I have ever purchased in my entire life. And I will stand by that. That is a large claim, but I think that it's worthy. This is a friendship story following two people who meet in a hospital game room and then go on to develop a game of their own. Fame, fortune, and friendship hijinks ensue. There is so much buzzing hype around this at the moment, so you bet your bottom dollar that this is high up on the priority list. Then we have Cloud, which is a book that you assume will make you feel emotional. I went for the traditional sense of feelings of general upset and sadness and selected A Man Called Ove by Frederick Buckman. This follows a main character, Ove. He is a cranky old curmudgeon who has his neighborhood expectations turned upside down when the Sunshine family moves in next door. This is a story that will be riddled with unexpected friendship. This could also be used for the daffodil space, but for the purpose of this one, it's the cloud for now. And then we have the sun space, which is read a happy book. And for this one, I actually had to download the book on my Kobo because I could not get it on any of the online or in-person stores that I have access to. I have picked up Legends and Lattes. If a cozy fantasy genre book cannot lift my spirits and make me happy, I have low hopes for every other book in the world. This follows an orc barbarian who has turned away from a life of fighting and adventures to open a cafe and instead just pour coffees for a living. And it says that it is a novel of high fantasy and low stakes, which just sings to my soul. This is what I love. Book of my heart. The second last one in row number 1 is Moon, which is a book that takes place in a country outside of the one that you live in. For this, I have picked a book that was on my summer splash TBR, and I never got to it. I have picked The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo. This is a children's picture book following Edward Tulane, who is thrown overboard of a cruise ship and goes on a decades-long journey across many different places. Given the statistical likelihood of any book being set in Australia, I have a relative confidence that this is not set in Australia. So we should be good with this one. But this is a children's fantasy book. It could also fit the roots space because this is one of the books of my childhood. So much room for mood reading. And the final book for the first row is Tree, which is read a non-fiction book. And for this, I have actually picked I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I don't have a physical copy of this. It has only just come out in Australia, literally like this week. But I do actually plan on listening to this on audiobook because Jeanette McCurdy is the narrator for it. And I think that that's just going to be the most pure and true way to actually intake this narrative. And it's one that I'm excited for. Again, another one that has a lot of buzz around it, so this could also be a part of the B space. I grew up watching iCarly and Victorious, and I'm just so ready to have my childhood dreams shattered by the harrowing truth of stardom and childhood stardom. Moving on to row number 2, we have, to start with, the daffodil space, which is read a book about friendship. And as I said, A Man Called Ove could have fit into this, but for the sake of this video, we're doing one for every prompt. I've picked A Psalm for the Wild built by Becky Chambers. How I didn't know that this existed prior to the last few months honestly blows my mind. Given that I don't actually properly understand the relationship between the robot and the monk in this book, I could be bending the rules a bit. Another cozy fantasy. I'm just ready to have my heart warmed, thawed out from the inside reading this book. Then we have Cacti, which is read a book that is non-needy. Because we can't have one without the other. This is the sequel for A Psalm for the Wild Build. So I naturally had to do both because we can't read one without the other without maximizing the amount of prompts I can get with the least amount of effort. The next space is the variegated space, which is reading a book that is rare or has minimal reviews. I have picked The Mask Falling by Samantha Shannon, and again, we're bending the rules a bit. This is the 4th installment in the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. It is set in a UK/Europe landscape. It's a fantasy/dystopian, and it follows a group of people who actually have powers over spirits. To be perfectly honest with you, I actually haven't really heard anything about this for many years. So is it rare? Not really. But again, we've been instructed by Ali to do what we want, and so I am. The next prompt is Prop, which is read a book that has been adapted into movies or TV. Look, this series fundamentally shaped my personality from year 7 to 10 in high school. Suitable again for the root space, this is a magical girls story following 5 girls who have elemental powers who try to save their world from an invading alien parallel world. This was a TV show. I was also obsessed with that. If that doesn't say something about my personality and my ability to take on personalities of book characters, I don't know what is. It started from a very young age. Moving on, the last space in the second row is the spider space, which is read a dark book, which is dark themes, horror, all that good dark twisty stuff. I feel like Gideon the Knight by Tamsin Muir is just becoming the next A Darker Shade of Magic for me. If you have been around for a while, you will know that if A Darker Shade of Magic was put into one of my TBRs, I just wouldn't read it. It just wouldn't happen. And that's happening to Gideon the Knight as well. I have put this book into so many TBRs and it just hasn't been read yet. For that reason, I'm actually gonna bump it up on the priority list for this readathon. I heard that it's amazing, and I've heard that it is comedic and dark, obviously, because we're dealing with literally necromancers. And we are moving down to the third row. We are almost halfway through. The next prompt is the lotus space, which is read a book with disability in it. Now, I'm bending the rules because I don't have a book on my shelf that has physical disability in it, and I still don't even know if I am actually bending the rules for this, but I'm including neurodivergency because I have a lot of neurodivergent books on my shelf. Is neurodivergency a disability? I don't think it is, but we're bending the rules, we're doing what we want, making it fit my TBR. I'm just changing the lotus space in mine to neurodivergent. For that, I will be reading The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is a romance that follows our main character. She is autistic and she is trying to navigate the world of dating, and she wants to learn more about dating. So she hires herself a male escort to teach her about this magical world of dating. There's just something really comforting that I find when I'm reading books that are narrated by autistic people. I don't know why that is, but it's just something that I enjoy. Next is The Succulent Space, and this is a book that makes you hot. In Ali's explanation of this, she said this could be something that makes you angry. But we're gonna go with the traditional sense of hot in this case. I picked up From Lukov with Love, which is an ice skating romance. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't actually know if this has any spice in it whatsoever. I'm assuming that it's going to make me have feelings of, you know, that contemporary romance feeling that you get when you're reading a book and you're just experiencing that relationship vicariously. And could we be any more on brand with an ice skating romance? I think not. For context, my partner and I met at the ice skating rink. And then we just get a free space for existing. It's like that ribbon that you get just for participating. I don't have to do anything. I just have to turn up. Then we have Lily, which is read a book that covers grief and or death. And for this, I have picked Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune because it literally says on the front here, his death was their beginning. Was there a better option? Probably, but we're going with this one. And the last space for row 3 is Snail, which is read a slow burn, or a book that's going to take you a long time. And I'm going with the latter of those two because I don't know what books I have that are going to be a slow burn. And if they are, I just don't have the space for that. Have you seen the size of this TBR? So I will actually be reading World of Warcraft lore. This is an anthology of various different World of Warcraft lore stories. I've spoken about it in my last video, but essentially I purchased this because Jared used to play lots of World of Warcraft, and I think he just wanted me to read more about the lore of World of Warcraft and to understand the world of World of Warcraft a bit more. Could I say World of Warcraft one more time? I know nothing about it, but I suspect I'm going to know some things about World of Warcraft by the end of this. I also won't be reading all of them. I'll just read as many of them as I see that I can in this time, and we're gonna call it a tick for the space. Coming in hot in our fourth row, we have Water, which is read from an author that you are thirsty to read more of. Once again, another one that was on my TBR for the last readathon that I participated in that I did not get to, and that was Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I loved Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I tried to read this and then promptly realized that I had forgotten everything that happened in Before the Coffee Gets Cold, so my plan is to reread Before the Coffee Gets Cold in October when you are watching this, in preparation for being able to read Tales from the Cafe. This is a continuation of more stories. In the first book, we follow a cafe in Japan that you can actually go back in time and visit someone from your past. However, there's many different rules and regulations around what you can and can't do, and one of those is that you have to return back to where you were before your coffee gets cold. Otherwise, terrible things will happen. And the first one was just so heartwarming. So I can only assume that the second one will be just as heartwarming. Then we have Fertilizer, which is read a book that will nourish your soul. Which reminds me, I need to water my plants before I leave. I've picked Stone Fruit by Lili, which I understand and realize upon reflection that this is not typically what I would think of when I think of heartwarming. However, there are various other books in this TBR that would fill the prompt of heartwarming if need be. But I think that this is gonna warm my heart in a different way, in a more of like a tragic mental health way, rather than just like your cozy fantasy vibes. This is a graphic novel that follows two partners who have recently separated, and they also occasionally care for their niece. And it goes through all of the mental health struggles that I'm assuming come from that. It's a really interesting and unique art style that I haven't actually seen before, and it's one that I'm just really excited to read. And it's gonna be another one of those ones that's not going to be as hard to read. So this could also be a cacti book, if need be. Again, so much room for mood reading. Then we have The Green Carnation Space, which is read a book that either features an LGBTQ+ character or from an author that is of that community as well. I have picked The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, which I have heard nothing but fabulous reviews about, and once again, can we take a moment for the cover? Look at how beautiful that is. Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School follows a 16-year-old. Her name is Yamliette. She has just enrolled in a Catholic school, however, she is Mexican and she's also gay. I've heard that it's fantastic. I'm excited to jump into it. And I think that it's just a crime that I haven't read this yet. Then we have The Ladybug Space, which is a book that is cute on the cover but could ruin you on the inside. The book pick that I have for this I haven't got yet. I've ordered it, it's on its way. I'm hoping that it turns up in time for the readathon. It is Lighter Than My Shadow. This beautifully illustrated cover explores how eating disorders can completely just ravage you, and then the subsequent recovery from that as well. I am so intrigued by this, and I will be reading it the second that it arrives at my door. We've done it, we've made it to the last row. First up we have Root, which is read a book that takes you back to your roots, a childhood favorite, a reread, if you will. And if you've been around for, again, any period of time, you'll know that I'm rereading the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead, both because I need to read The Ruby Circle, which has been sitting on my bookshelf for literally over a decade, but also because my peeps over on the Booked and Busy podcast Discord are also rereading the series, and also the TV show just came out, which I started watching and I had to stop halfway through the first episode because it was just awful. Next we have Earth, which is a book that has been published or is set before 1990. For this, I have picked The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I read another Khaled Hosseini recently. It was And the Mountains Echoed, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really enjoy his writing. It is equal parts deep and rich, but also quite easy to digest at the same time. It's a really nice balance. Set in 1970s Afghanistan, The Kite Runner follows our main character as he is forced to flee Afghanistan to go to America because Russia has invaded, but then I also believe that he potentially has to go back to an Afghanistan that has been overrun by the Taliban, which is an area that I know minimal about. I feel like I'm expanding my knowledge of the modern history world events, and I'm excited to continue my journey through books like these that, though are fiction, are still based in truth. Next is Ivy, which is read a book that is highly rated on your shelf. I have picked The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller because is there a person on TikTok that hasn't read this yet at this point? It is one of the OG BookTok hype wrecks and I just missed the bandwagon. So this is quite widely loved and it has an average Goodreads rating of 4.38 with about 950,000 ratings and about 100,000 reviews. Quite popular, quite highly rated. But again, I've said I'll read it before and we know I'm not going to read all the books on this TBR. So is this going to be one of the ones that makes the cut? Watch this space. Next we have the Dandelion space, which is reading a book that's been on your shelf for a very long time. And I was going to put this book, this book, because this has literally been on my shelf since Borders closed in the late 2000s. Safe to say, it's been here for a while, definitely over 10 years, still have not read it. However, given the fact that this is a bind up of 3 fantasy books from a high fantasy series, I just don't feel like I have the mental capacity to jump into another fantasy series at this point in the year. So we will not be reading this one yet. So I will instead be reading what I think is actually the second oldest book on my TBR, and that is Passenger by Alexandra Bracken. I couldn't even tell you the plot of this anymore. All I know is that it's about travel and a girl that's pulled back in time, apparently. This is one of those books, again, been on my TBR since it came out a very long time ago. The series has since concluded, and I predict that I'm not going to like it. 10 years ago, Michaela would have liked it. Will 10 years older Michaela like it? Who knows? Who knows at this point? And the last space on the Bloomin readathon bingo card is the Mole space, which is read a book with a strong antagonist. Because what's a stronger antagonist than mental illness and murder? I'm doing what I want. Okay, that's it. That's my TBR for the Bloomin readathon. Are you excited? I'm really excited. This is going to be a really fun reading month and I hope that you will join me for said reading month because it is my last chance to try to smash out all of the books that I've been planning on reading for very obviously a long time. That's all I have to talk to you about today. So thank you for coming along and sticking with me throughout this very long-winded TBR of books. Kudos if you've made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you're having a fantastic day or night or whatever time it is where you're in the world and I will see you next week. Bye!